Hi guys, welcome back to the Spurred On podcast. With Tottenham's biggest game of the season coming up on Friday night, the FA Cup fourth round tie at home to Manchester City, I thought we'd get on our resident football coach and expert and somebody who supports a club who've already played Man City at home this season and got a very, very impressive 4-4 draw against them. It's Matt Beadle. Matt, how are you?
That's very sweet of you to introduce me. Nice to see you again, Barney. I'm very well, thanks, mate.
So, this is a huge game for Tottenham Hotspur.
Yeah,
You, as a Chelsea fan, probably delighting in the fact you've made a cup final now, but with your football coach's head on,
yeah.
how can Tottenham Hotspur go about turning over the treble winners and Pep Guardiola's team, including Kevin de Bruyne, this Friday night?
Maybe you could just pull the plug on the floodlights or something. Get them abandoned. I think that's probably your best shot. Wow. I think I'd probably be a richer coach than I am if I knew how to break Guardiola's, genius. But listen, I think irrelevant of what I say, I can see Spurs just having a go for it.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot more of you guys this year than I have in the past, and there seem to be two tactics against Man City, right? And there have been for the last 4 or 5 years. You either play with a flat, you either park the bus, as Mourinho used to say, you get two banks of four in there and try and hit them on the break, or get a set piece or something. Or some teams try to have a go. Now, I'm a Chelsea fan, so I can talk about that game you just mentioned a moment ago. Chelsea had a go that night, and ended up scoring 4 goals. It could have ended 12-4, though. So I'm not saying that's the only way to go about it, but they're going to dominate the ball. Whether they have 60% or 85%, that depends on how Tottenham play. But I think you've got to have a go. I think you've got to put balls over the top. The wing backs play very high. So put balls down the channel, get runners on behind the ball, and have a go and try and get them on the back foot.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that Spurs have an unbelievable record, especially at their new stadium against Man City. Man City haven't even managed to score in all the games they've played there since 2019, and Spurs have
Wow.
won pretty much every game. But that has always been with Heung-min Son and Harry Kane playing, and they've scored a lot of goals. Kane obviously has left. Sonny is at the Asian Cup, so that's going to be a bit of a problem. And also, every time we've beaten them, we have pretty much parked the bus. And now we've got Ange Postecoglou. I think you're right. I think there's going to be at least, for any gamblers out there, I would go above like 5.5 goals minimum in this game. I think there are going to be absolutely loads of goals in it. I
Yeah.
wanted to just come to you as well on a kind of larger picture about Manchester City in general. Obviously, they've got 115 charges in terms of the profitability and sustainability rules. How do you feel as a football lover in general about what Manchester City have done over the past 10, 12, 13 years? And what do you think will end up happening to them?
I've got to be. I want to be careful because I don't want to be hounded by their team of lawyers. So I'll prefix everything with allegedly,
Mm.
but allegedly they've broken every rule that there is. And I'd throw the book at them if that is found to be true. Not because that's Man City and because it's not my team doing well. Chelsea were found for a few years ago, for example, for breaking rules with youth signings, and they were punished for it. One could argue maybe they weren't punished enough. I think if we don't set these sanctions, then the sky's the limit, and football's just going to turn into a gangster scene. If Everton got 10 points deducted and Juventus got relegated
Mm.
for lesser crimes, I'm afraid you've got to relegate them.
Mm.
And potentially, I mean, it got very close. I live in Germany, as I think your listeners have heard before, and it got very, very close a few years ago that Borussia Dortmund would get not only relegated, but get their professional license taken from them. So they'd have to go to the fourth division. Um,
What was that for? Sorry, I don't remember that.
that was also for financial irregularities, and they were in Germany. You have to show that you've got you've got money in the bank every season. If you haven't, then you either start the season with points deducted or you can get relegated. And they'd missed deadline after deadline after deadline, and there was like an 11th hour consortium that saved them. But that wasn't really breaking rules. That was just going bust, right? It sounds like Man City allegedly have
Mm.
just broken rules, and that's not what football was about when I was a kid, and I don't want it to go in that direction.
Okay, so you mentioned you live in Germany. Obviously, Pep was also very, very successful at Bayern before he came to
Yeah,
Manchester City. What is his
yeah.
legacy in Germany? I mean, I want to ask this with a kind of my maybe old-fashioned take on this, which is, you know, Pep. A lot of people compare Pep Guardiola to Sir Alex Ferguson, but the thing I love most about Sir Alex Ferguson and why I would put him right up there in the kind of pantheon of great managers is because he started at St Mirren or wherever, and then he went to Aberdeen and he won a European trophy at Aberdeen, and then he got the biggest club in Britain, arguably, and whereas Pep kind of went straight to Barcelona and then to Bayern and Man City. And I don't want it to be as obvious as, he's never had to do it he's never managed Stoke or whatever, but is his legacy as one of the great managers of all time as talked about in Germany as it is in England?
It definitely is, and I think it's definitely deserved. You missed out one team that he coached, and that was Barcelona B. To be
That's
fair
true.
to him,
That's
so
true.
he started there. No, I think it's too easy to throw that at him and say he's only ever coached big teams, because Mourinho's only ever coached big teams, and he's
No,
been sacked.
Mourinho won the Champions League with Porto.
All right, but after that, he's only
Yeah.
No, he's revered as an absolute genius here, and I think rightly so. And I think what is fair to say about Guardiola is his teams, although people tend to put this monocle on him, it's not true. His teams don't all play the same way. He does adapt his style to the teams that he's got. So the Barcelona, what was that, 2011, 12, 13 team had 7 relatively slow, great touch midfielders, and so tiki-taka was born, and they just annihilate, maybe the greatest club side of all time, in my opinion. It is. Then he takes a break. Then he goes to Man U. Everyone expected it to be tiki-taka, and it wasn't. He had Robben bombing down the wing, and he had
you said Man U weirdly. I'm just going to cut in and say Bayern.
Oh, sorry, did I say Man? How strange.
Yeah,
sorry, Bayern. He went to Bayern Munich, and everyone expected him to do the same there and play tiki-taka, and he didn't. As I said, he was playing balls in the channel, playing up to a big centre forward who was holding the ball off. Still phenomenal football to watch, but different. He's gone to Man City, and I think you can argue it's a combination of lots of different styles, right? Sometimes they dominate the ball and play tiki-taka. Sometimes they put Foden in the channels, or sometimes they knock balls in the box to Haaland. So I think saying that he's a one-trick pony and he can only play tiki-taka, I think it's unfair, and I think that's why they're so terrifying.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Maybe I'm just, clutching at straws, desperately hoping that he will take a tiny job at some point and see what happens there.
I want to jump in on that, because I think if anyone's got a chance of beating these kind of teams, Liverpool are probably in the same category. It seems like Tottenham will have a go, because they press the ball very high, right? They get, hang on, I've made a couple of notes here. So the last couple of games they played with Foden, Grealish, Alvarez up front, or before that they played with Doku, Foden on the other side, Alvarez. These are players who just run all day long. My 15-year-old son wears a tracker when he goes to training when he plays, right? And when he opens up the app after the game, he can compare himself against other players. And the one that he's chosen for whatever reason is Phil Foden. And so he always compares how many meters Phil Foden ran this week and how many sprints he did and those kind of things. And he's always miles off, because Foden is and not only Foden, Doku's the same, Alvarez is the same, Silva, Kovacic, these players are phenomenally fit and they press the ball so high. Why am I saying this? Because I think that could be, if there is a way to beat Man City, it's that you'll try and pass through them, you'll back yourself to try and pass through them, and once you get through the press, then it can be 5-on-4, or it can be 6-on-4 or whatever, and then you got a chance. The teams that have just parked the bus against them haven't had that opportunity to get out. So what you end up doing is playing long balls, and they just come back to you.
Yeah, and we did play at the Etihad only about 6 weeks ago, and we actually had Emerson Royal and Ben Davis playing at centre back because of our injuries, and we managed to get 3-3 We managed to get 3-3 draw there. Although we did have Sonny in the team, but we now have our kind of full strength back four, which is Porro on the right, Udogie on the left, and then Christian Romero and Mickey van der Ven. And one thing that I'd say is that Christian Romero is so unbelievably world class with the ball at his feet in terms of breaking the press and being willing to play brave balls in between the lines when he's being pressed, that I think that could really make a huge difference for us. The worry I do have, though, is in terms of our ability to take the few chances that we may create. But we may make 5 great chances, but in those previous games against Man City with Son and Kane, we're taking pretty much all of those chances. And
Yeah.
now, as much as I think Richarlison is improving and doing well, you'd rather have Sonny, in the spotlight when those chances come.
I suppose so, but if Werner's fit and plays, you've got a great player on the break, right? So if players like Romero, Van de Ven can win the ball, can nick it, can play balls into midfield, and you can get Højbjerg on the half turn and put balls in behind, you've got players quick enough to really, frighten Man City. Walker's one of the quickest players in the world, but the other ones aren't. So, and like I say, no matter how quick he is, the wing backs play so high, there is space in behind. The problem is Werner needs 4 chances to score 1, and Kane only needs 1 to score 1. Right?
Well, one of the impressive things I found about Werner on his debut was that actually, and he's actually mentioned this in a couple of interviews, is he doesn't see himself as a goal scorer first and foremost anymore. He says he thinks himself more of somebody who to use his pace on the break and then set people up. And he actually got the assist with a really excellently weighted pass into Bentancur to score in that first game. So if he can kind of break, if let's say Walker gets caught up the pitch and he can break in behind him, then maybe he will just look for Richarlison and not try and take on the 4 chances that he'll need to get one.
Well, you know what? That sentence that you just said, that he sees himself as a playmaker and not as a striker, is spoken like a true man who doesn't score enough goals, right?
Yeah.
That's just a get out. He would love to be a goal scorer and he'd love to get 20, 25 goals a season. But he is a good provider. He does provide a lot of assists. And I think we talked about it in the last pod that I was on. He doesn't only provide direct assists, his movement does pull players around because he runs and runs and he makes these sort of diagonal and curved runs. He runs deliberately offside. He pulls defenders out of the way, and that might leave space for Richarlison. Do you expect Johnson to play again, or?
I think it depends, actually, because James Maddison has been training again, but I wonder if this one will come a bit early for him. But if Maddison was to start, then I think that would push Kulusevski back out to the right and Johnson would be on the bench. Johnson, who is, raw potential and has made some really good assists, but he's getting a bit of flack from some of the Spurs fan base for his final ball sometimes at the moment. So it might be good to get him out of the firing line. He's played way more games than I would have expected him to at this point because we've had the injuries. So I think if Maddison were to start, which I'd say is very much kind of 40-60 against, then Kulusevski would play on the right. If not, then Kulusevski, I think, will play in the 10 and Johnson on the right. And Johnson does have raw pace.
Yeah, they're not slow. They're not slow at all. Like I said, I think that's Tottenham's best chance is to have a go, try and pass through midfield. But you've got to accept, and I think, judging by what I've seen of Tottenham already this year and the coach, they do. They accept that they're going to make, they're going to give balls away and get done. If you accept that's the risk that you're going to take, then you got to go for it. I agree with you. I think there could be tons of goals. I think it could be a 4-3 thriller or something.
Yeah, and we are watching it together in a London pub, so I'm excited about that.
How exciting. I'm looking forward to paying £9 a pint to watch. Yes,
exactly.
Really
classic person living in Germany complaining about the cost, just like we used to. We used to talk. I remember when I was a kid talking about apparently in Denmark it's £8 for a pint, and now it's the same here. I have to bring up the Kevin de Bruyne factor. He's fit again and absolutely turned around their game at St James's Park. Came on with 20 minutes to go and just kind of, from what I saw, just sat in the number 10 role. And I was absolutely shocked that Eddie Howe didn't tell someone to just stand on him because he had the freedom of the park and just destroyed them. How do you go about stopping De Bruyne? Can you man mark him? Is there anything you can do? I know Big Ange wouldn't do that, but I'm just saying, what an unbelievable talent. How do you stop that player?
Yeah, I think he's the best playmaker in the world at the moment when he's fit. He's extraordinary. Another player that Chelsea extraordinarily let go.
Him and Salah would have done decently for you if you just kept with them for a couple of years.
They both turned into quite decent footballers, didn't they? He is phenomenal, and what I love about him is that he doesn't just live from his athleticism, right? He's fit and healthy and can run a bit, but it's not like he's super fast or anything. It's not like he's super physical or anything. It's just pure reading of the game. I was at a coaching conference last year, and they had a professor, I think it was also from Denmark, certainly from Scandinavia, and he was talking about scanning, right? So checking over your shoulder, understanding where you are and stuff. And they showed clips of De Bruyne scanning, and his rate of scanning per second is just miles ahead of other top league professionals, other Premier League professionals. Extraordinary. So to answer your question, can you just put somebody on him? You can put somebody on him, but he knows he's there and he's scanning so much and he's so aware of what's going on that he only needs to take 1 or 2 steps or maybe stand still. Sometimes standing still is the best thing because the ball goes off to one side. Players instinctively tend to go towards it. Sometimes some of the great number 10s just stand still and people go away from you. He's got that amazing awareness of space. I don't think it's fair to say to him, he knows, it's like he's got eyes in the back of his head. No, he doesn't have eyes in the back of the head. He looked over his shoulder 12 times in the last couple of seconds.
Yeah.
And other players were following the ball. I wouldn't man mark him. I think it's a waste of a player because he'll hurt you anyway. Even if you man mark him, he only needs half a yard. You've just got to try and dominate the ball and not let him get on the ball as much.
Yeah. And then in a similar kind of, what I'm talking about, Erling Haaland, I think is likely out, but possibly on the bench. Yeah. Obviously, they've got so much other talent. How big a difference do you think that makes? I mean, he's elite in terms of his, one-on-ones and 6-yard box play and stuff, but they won't play any, that kind of cuts off a potential route for them, doesn't it, in terms of changing it up and playing it down the channels and into that, maybe actually Ederson, I think, will be out as well. I was going to say the goalkeeper just going long, which they're really brilliant at, actually, sometimes, Man City. Ederson will just hit it over the top of your back four and then Haaland's in. Do you think, I mean, it seems like a silly question, but do you think Spurs have more of a chance that Haaland is out?
Yeah, they definitely do, but you've got to be aware that they then play slightly differently, right? Yeah. So when he's playing, they play balls into feet to him, they play balls around the corner, they play, for me, a little bit more centrally. But when he's not playing, then they exploit the wings more. They have these underlaps that Guardiola does so brilliantly. We try and train that with our boys, and we do get success out of it. But I wish I could get it work in the way that he does. That sometimes you have an overlap and an underlap. Sometimes you have a second underlap. The centre half just don't know where to go. That movement, that permanent movement in the channels and on the wings, there's more of that when he's not playing. And so I'm not sure City are less dangerous. They're just different. They're just dangerous in a different way, Yeah. He's so dangerous, as you said. He can hold the ball up so well. He can roll players so well. He's great in the just getting half a yard in the box. Man City lose that when he's not there. But then, maybe you play as a false 9. You play Phil Foden as a false 9, who's, one of the best players in the world. So I don't know. It's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, I'm afraid.
Yeah, all being from everything you've said sounds like a difficult game, to be honest. I personally think that the winner, I'm putting my head on the block here, but I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think the winner has the ribbons on the cup this year. That's how confident I am that this is a huge game in the cup. I know Liverpool are still in it, but Arsenal are out. And I don't know. I just fancy that whoever wins this game will win the cup. I also think that neither team will want a replay. So I think if it gets into the last 20 minutes, I could definitely see Guardiola shoving loads of attackers on and stuff like that. I'm going to ask you for a prediction before the end of this podcast right now. In fact, Matthew, you tell me what you think the score will be.
I'm going high-scoring draw, 3-3, and then maybe a replay, something like that.
Ugh, that would be awful because we've got I don't think we've got any chance of winning at the Etihad in a replay, but let's see what happens. You never, ever know. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on the podcast once again. Tell the audience where they can find your stuff.
Cheers, mate. Instagram, Matt L. Beadle, and the same on LinkedIn, and my website is mattbeadle.com.
Perfect. And guys, thank you so much for your support at home. As ever, if you're listening on the podcast platforms, please do come over to YouTube, youtube.com/@BarnabySlater_, and vice versa. Go and search for the Spurred On podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And you can now be a Spurred On Pro member, just £1 a month for some extra perks, early videos, guaranteed comment replies, and soon enough, some membership-only live Q&As, etc. You can be a Patreon member, that's £1 a month, or a Spurred On Pro member on YouTube. Just look in the description box of how to do that. Guys, with Friday night's big game coming up, get behind the team. Come on, you Spurs.